ensemble, nous avons abordé les sujets suivants. L'achèvement de la lutte contre la COVID-19 et la préparation à une pandémie mondiale. Les mesures à prendre pour assurer une relance économique vigoureuse et inclusive. Le commerce international et les possibilités pour les entreprises canadiennes. L'abortabilité, l'inflation mondiale et la congestion de la chaîne d'approvisionnement. La lutte contre les changements climatiques. Dans le cadre de ce travail, le Premier ministre a annoncé aujourd'hui que le Canada va contribuer 200 millions de vaccins à l'échelle internationale par l'intermédiaire du mécanisme COVAX et l'octroi de 15 millions de dollars pour aider à augmenter la production de vaccins en Afrique du Sud. Pendant mon séjour, j'ai également rencontré le vice-chancelier et ministre des Finances de l'Allemagne, Olaf Scholz, le Premier ministre du Royaume-Uni, Boris Johnson, évidemment avec le Premier ministre, le Premier ministre de l'Espagne, Pedro Sánchez, encore une fois, évidemment avec le Premier ministre, le ministre français de l'Économie, des Finances et de la Relance, Bruno Le Maire, la ministre indienne des Finances et d'Affaires corporatives, Nirmala Sitharaman. Dans la perspective de notre visite à Glasgow et de la COP26, le Canada continuera de travailler en étroite collaboration avec ses partenaires et alliés sur les questions qui comptent pour les Canadiens. So, good afternoon. This week in Rome at the G20, we have been working hard on the priorities of Canadians. Among other issues, we have been discussing the fight against COVID-19 and global pandemic preparedness, ensuring that our Canadian and global economic recovery is strong and inclusive, international trade and opportunities for Canadian businesses, affordability, global inflation and supply chain congestion, and of course, fighting climate change, and women and the economy. As part of our work, today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced Canada's increased commitment to international vaccine sharing through COVAX, through which Canada will donate 200 million doses and $15 million to help develop vaccine production in South Africa. While here, I've also had meetings with the German Vice Chancellor and Minister of Finance, Olaf Scholz, and then, of course, together with the Prime Minister, a meeting with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson. Also together with the Prime Minister, a meeting with the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sánchez. I met with the French Minister of Economy, Finance and Recovery, Bruno Le Maire, and the Indian Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Nirmala Sitharaman. As we look forward to Glasgow and COP26, Canada will continue to work closely with our partners and allies on the issues that matter to Canadians. I'm now happy to answer your questions.
Bonjour, on va prendre 20 minutes de questions des journalistes canadiens. S'il vous plaît, dites votre nom puis le nom de votre organisation avant de poser votre question. Canadian journalists can line up here at the microphone. We'll have 20 minutes for questions from Canadian journalists. If you could just state your name and the name of your organization, that would be great.
Mr. Freeland, thanks for joining us today. Michael Couture with Global National. I just wanted to ask you, yesterday the World Health Organization again called for the temporary waiver on the intellectual property rights for vaccines at the WTO so that poorer countries can make these vaccines themselves. So why does Canada continue to not support this?
Canada is very supportive of production of vaccines in the developing world, and that is why the Prime Minister announced today that Canada will be contributing $15 million towards a vaccine production facility in South Africa. On the TRIPS waiver issue, Canada and our Minister of Trade, Marianne, is working very collaboratively and constructively on this.
So just as a follow-up, why, despite that work, collaborative work, why not make that decision on the trips rather than donate the $15 million to South Africa?
Well, I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean, I think that it is a good thing for Canada to be supporting vaccine production facilities, and we're really glad to be making this contribution. I also would like to point out that Canada today announced $70 million to support vaccine distribution around the world, that important final step.
Good afternoon, Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. I'm just curious, you promised 200 million doses by the end of next year. They're asking for more doses by the end of this year. Do we know how many doses Canada will have distributed by the end of 2022, and will any of them come from Canada's supply that's already within Canada?
By the end of 2022?
By the end of this year.
Okay, I probably shouldn't have offered to help you make that question more precise. Look, Canada's commitment of 200 million doses by the end of 2022 is very significant, given our size and given the fact that we do not have our own domestic biomanufacturing capacity. I would also like to remind people that Canada has stepped up, and we stepped up very early on with a $1.3 billion contribution to the ACT Accelerator. We right now are one of only 6 countries in the world that have made our full assessed contribution as assessed by the people running the ACT Accelerator. So we are standing up and doing our share, and that is absolutely the right thing to do. In terms of the timing of the doses, the other thing that I would point out, as the Prime Minister announced today, is that we did announce that we will be donating 10 million Moderna doses. And we, it's, as we have experienced in the provision of doses to Canada itself, it's hard to be exactly precise, and maybe particularly hard for Canada since we're not manufacturing this stuff ourselves. But let me just say we expect those Moderna doses to be delivered quickly.
And I'm also curious, the leaders from China and Russia are not here. I'm just wondering if that's going to have any impact on the agreements and on the negotiations, particularly on the measures for climate change.
Look, I think Canada is rightly proud of the role Canadian leadership played in the creation of the G20. And the G20, of course, is most effective when all the G20 leaders are at the table. Having said that, I do think we also need to recognize that the fight against COVID is not finished yet, and different countries will take different decisions about international travel while we're still finishing the fight against COVID. Je pense que le Canada, les Canadiens et Canadiennes peuvent et doivent être fiers de notre rôle en tant que pays dans la création de la G20. C'est vraiment une table importante pour résoudre les plus importants enjeux au niveau international, au niveau multilatéral. Et une des raisons pour lesquelles le G20 fonctionne, c'est que c'est la seule table autour duquel les leaders du 20 plus importants, pays du monde peuvent se réunir et discuter en direct. C'est la réalité. En même temps, je pense qu'on doit aussi comprendre que la lutte contre la COVID n'est pas finie. Les conditions dans des pays du monde sont diverses. Et je pense qu'on doit respecter les décisions que chaque leader prend concernant voyager à l'international dans ce période-là. Et je veux aussi souligner que chaque pays était représenté par les représentants ici physiques. Et aussi, on a eu la possibilité de la participation en manière virtuelle.
Hello, Heather Schofield from the Toronto Star.
Hi, Heather.
Hi. How important is it that the G20 arrive at or agree to precise dates to deliver net zero by 2050 and have interim targets? And why is it so difficult getting to that point of having a precise schedule?
Look, I think we all recognize around the world, and certainly in Canada, the importance of acting on climate change and the reality that today we need to really move from broad, ambitious commitments, important as those are, to starting to get really specific about the steps we're going to take to get there. And that is certainly the Canadian approach. That was something that was really fundamental in our climate platform in the election campaign, was being really specific and saying, these are real practical steps we can take. And I was really glad during the campaign that independent climate experts, when they assessed our plan, one of the points they made was, this is actually practical and can be done. And so you're quite right, Heather, to say it's important for all the countries of the world to do that individually and collectively. Having said that, I do also think it's important for us as a wealthy country to recognize that taking climate action can impose greater costs on some countries than on others. And it's important for us to recognize that and have real conversations about that. And that is what is happening here and what I believe will be happening at COP26.
Okay, and I noticed when the Prime Minister named Stephen Guilbeault as the next Environment Minister, Mr. Guilbeault had pointed out that he would make a priority of looking at fossil fuel subsidies, and I'm wondering if that's something that Canada is ready to move on here at G20 or at COP.
Well, we made a commitment in our election platform, and the commitment in our election platform was to move faster than the G20 commitment and to eliminate all fossil fuel subsidies by 2023. That's something we promised Canadian voters.
Hi, Eric Reguly.
Hi, Eric. It's nice to see you.
Hello. Nice to see you too. Two questions. On the 200 million vaccines by the end of next year, don't you think Canada's promised big numbers before and failed to deliver? At the G70, I think the number was 40 million, and the actual deliveries were low. There's several million. So why should we believe now that 200 million are going to go out the door by next year?
Look, we have made a number of different and specific commitments when it comes to the global fight against the pandemic. The 200 million dose commitment, which includes, as I said, announced today, 10 million doses directly from Moderna that will come soon. It includes the 15 million for building the facility in South Africa. It includes an additional 70 million to facilitate vaccine distribution around the world. That sort of final last step, which can be complicated. And I will also point out, 1.3 billion is a significant amount of money, and we were there early with that funding for the ACT Accelerator. There are only 6 countries in the world, and Canada is one of them, that can say they have stepped up to their fully assessed level. In terms of the delivery of doses, as people who were in Canada this year can attest, Canada doesn't have its own domestic vaccine production. This is not something we directly as a country control. This is a good faith commitment. We are confident we can meet it by the end of 2022, but we just don't have the factories ourselves.
Quick follow-up question on the...
We're building them though, sorry. We are building them, about our deal with Moderna. So.
Just a quick question on, was there any movement today on special drawing rights, donating them to other countries?
Yes, there was.
Okay.
Great question. So the Prime Minister announced today that we will donate 20% of Canada's SDR allocation to the PRGT.
Do you have a value on that?
I want to give it to you exactly because SDRs and Canadian dollars and US dollars are all give me 30 seconds. You know what? I'll come back to the specific number at the end, Eric.
Madame Freeland, j'ai un peu la même question en français. Pouvez-vous nous dire comment l'engagement qui a été pris aujourd'hui peut rassurer les pays qui n'ont pas de vaccin, sachant que sur les 40 millions de doses que le Canada a promis, il y a seulement 3 millions et quelques qui ont été livrés en ce moment?
Absolument. Premièrement, je pense que c'est important de souligner que le Canada a pris une série des engagements concernant la campagne internationale de vaccination. Premièrement, et je pense que la chose la plus importante, une contribution de 1,3 milliard de dollars pour l'Act Accelerator. Le Canada est une de seulement 6 pays dans tout le monde qui a fait la contribution au niveau qui était jugé pour les pays du monde. C'est une grande chose. Et 1,3 milliard de dollars, c'est une grande contribution. En plus, le Canada a promis aujourd'hui 70 millions de dollars pour la distribution des vaccins à l'international. On a aussi annoncé aujourd'hui qu'on va contribuer 15 millions de dollars pour la construction des facilités pour la production des vaccins en Afrique du Sud. Et cet enjeu, avoir la production dans les pays africains, était un des enjeux soulevés le plus vigoureusement par les pays africains eux-mêmes. Alors vraiment, c'est important et le Canada est là. Concernant les doses, on a pris un engagement de contribuer 200 millions de doses d'ici la fin 2022. C'est un engagement sincère, on va le faire. En même temps, je pense qu'on doit constater qu'on n'a pas la production chez nous. On ne contrôle pas la production. Mais d'ici le fin 2022, on est certain que ce sera possible de contribuer à ce niveau.
Qu'est-ce qui va rassurer la population des pays plus pauvres, excluant le Canada? S'il y a 1,8 milliard de doses qui ont été promises et 260 millions qui ont été livrées, qu'est-ce qui bloque? Qu'est-ce qui fait qu'on n'est pas en mesure de livrer ces doses-là?
Je pense qu'il y a deux enjeux et le Canada, avec nos engagements, fait partie de la solution de ces deux problèmes. Un problème, c'est vraiment la production. On a besoin de production plus vite dans le monde. Et pour cette raison, la contribution du Canada pour la production en Afrique du Sud est vraiment importante. Et je pense que, comme Canadiens, nous pouvons vraiment comprendre la situation des autres pays qui manquent ces productions dans les pays des vaccins, parce qu'on est dans la même situation. Et pour moi, personnellement, quand on a signé le contrat avec Moderna pour la production au Canada, c'était un moment très important. On a maintenant au Canada la certitude. Et on a maintenant contribué à cette même certitude pour l'Afrique du Sud et les pays d'Afrique en général. Le deuxième problème, c'est la question de la distribution. C'est vraiment une question de logistique qui est complexe est difficile. Et pour cette raison, la contribution du Canada de 70 millions de dollars pour la distribution internationale aussi est important et va contribuer à la vaccination du monde.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. A similar question. I'm having trouble understanding, having committed several months ago to at least 100 million doses, you've only distributed 3.4, I think is the current number, 3.4 million to poor countries. That's terrible. What do you think the problem is now? What is the rate limiting step? If you're prepared to spend the money on this, why are they not being delivered?
We are absolutely prepared to spend the money, Glenn. And I really do want to emphasize, we acted early and at scale with our $1.3 billion contribution to the ACT Accelerator. There are only 6 countries in the world that can say they have made their fully assessed contributions, and Canada is one of them. In terms of the actual delivery of doses, as we experienced to our own national frustration and anxiety this year, we don't have domestic biomanufacturing capacity. And so the reality is we do not control the manufacture of vaccines. What we can do is contribute money, which we have done. What we can do is be strategic in the contribution of that money. So in addition to the ACT Accelerator, the South Africa contribution for the production there is meaningful. The 70 million for distribution, I think, is really important because that is that last mile of vaccination. In the conversations that I had with finance and health ministers yesterday and the conversation today, the people who are technically involved in global vaccination said that's a big part of the challenge right now. The announcement that 10 million doses from Moderna that we have ordered will go straight from Moderna to COVAX is significant. But I also want to be realistic with Canadians. We really experienced in December of last year, in the first quarter, even the first half of this year, that we can have contracts with global vaccine manufacturers, and we do. And it is thanks to those contracts that at the end of the day, we're going to be able to be generous with the rest of the world. But we simply don't control the pace of the production.
Even at this increased level of 200 million doses, it's still just a small fraction of the total demand. Do you get a sense coming out of the discussions today if other G20 member countries are going to meet the same level of commitment, and if so, on what timeline?
Well, look, Glenn, as I said, there are only 6 countries in the world that have met their full ACT Accelerator assessed contribution level. I'm not going to list those countries, but you're welcome to look them up. And Canada certainly is in a position to say, as we have been saying in these meetings, to our international partners, it would be good for you guys to all step up as well. I think that is a really, really important thing. I have to say I am cautiously optimistic that we are going to see real effective action on global vaccination. I think it is, well, I can report to you that it is a truth universally acknowledged at the G20, at the level of finance ministers, health ministers, and leaders, that we all have a pragmatic interest in getting the world vaccinated. So certainly there is a moral obligation. There is also the practical reality that we will finish, each one of us, the fight against COVID in our own countries by getting this international vaccination campaign done. And that the practical realization of that, I think, is really, really important. And I do think we are seeing that while, of course, it would be great if we had all the vaccines the world needs right now, we have been seeing throughout the year vaccine production really being stepped up.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks very much. Merci beaucoup.
Ok, merci beaucoup tout le monde.